Welcome, Bellumnoxis Prime listeners. Legion, you march with Bellumnoxis Prime, where the chronicles of fire and storm are told with the weight of command. Tonight, the Valley of Ironvale opens before us, a place where rivers bled, where empires clashed, and where the earth itself drank the cost of war. Subscribe and join the Legion, for the night of battle has begun. Ironvale was a wound in the world. A valley carved deep by rivers that had flowed since the first stones split, its cliffs jagged like the teeth of giants. From the north to the south it stretched, its ground scarred by ages of conflict, its waters whispering the stories of countless dead. No traveler crossed its plain without feeling the weight of history pressing down. For Ironvale was a graveyard long before this battle began. Two rivers cut through its heart, glinting silver beneath the morning sun. They wound like serpents, dividing the valley into a labyrinth of crossings, marshes, and islands of stone. At their meeting place lay a broad, sluggish marsh, a place where reeds grew thick and where mist hung low, even in daylight. The waters there seemed calm, yet those who stared too long into their depths swore they saw shadows moving beneath the surface, as though the river itself remembered every drop of blood spilled upon its banks. On the northern edge, the High Dominion had encamped. Their army spread like wildfire across the ridgeline, a vast host of steel and banners. War tents glimmered white and gold, their peaks sharp as spearheads. Fire pits smoked endlessly, black trails curling into the sky. War drums thundered without pause, rolling down into the valley like the heartbeat of a beast that had never known defeat. Their soldiers drilled even at dawn, ranks of spear and shield gleaming in unison, their discipline a wall as unyielding as stone. At the center of their camp rose a great command pavilion, its banners emblazoned with the sun sigil of the Dominion, a promise of conquest to all who defied them. Across the valley to the south, the coalition of fractured kingdoms stood waiting. Their encampment was smaller, a patchwork of banners sewn from every corner of the land. Crimson lions, black stags, green serpents, silver towers, each one representing a king or warlord who had chosen to stand against the tide. Their soldiers were fewer, their armor worn, their weapons mismatched, yet their defiance burned hotter than the Dominion's gold. Fires burned through the night in their camp, not for comfort, but to remind every man who gazed into the flames that this valley was their last stand. Between the armies lay Ironvale itself, wide and silent. The rivers cut through its floor like veins across flesh, whispering with an eerie calm. Mist rose from the marshlands, curling into strange shapes that drifted between the reeds. Carrion birds circled high above, their black wings glinting as they wheeled endlessly, waiting for the feast they knew was coming. The air grew heavy. Farmers in distant villages barred their doors and silenced their children, for even miles away they could feel the shadow of Ironvale pressing upon them. The wind itself seemed to falter at the mouth of the valley, as though it too hesitated to enter. The stage was set. Two armies glared across the rivers, their banners straining in the same wind, their weapons glinting beneath the same sun. Ironvale lay still, calm as glass, but beneath its surface, history stirred. Within days, the calm waters of the rivers would be broken, turned crimson with the lifeblood of warriors who believed themselves eternal. And when the rivers ran red, Ironvale would be remembered not as a valley, but as a tomb. The first day in Ironvale passed without a single arrow loosed. The Dominion remained on its ridge, their camp glowing like a field of embers in the night. Across the valley, the coalition lit fewer fires, their flames small, guarded, as though they sought not to challenge the stars, but to conserve what little they possessed. On the second day, scouts clashed at the river crossings. Small bands of riders darted across the shallow fords, testing the ground. measuring the resolve of their enemies. Steel sang for the first time on the banks of Ironvale. Blood stained the water, thin rivulets at first, quickly swallowed by the current. Each side retrieved their dead in silence, and the rivers flowed on, whispering promises of greater sacrifice yet to come. By the third day, the valley itself had become a theater of intimidation. The Dominion sent forth their war engines, great towers braced with iron, their wheels crushing earth as they were hauled to the river's edge. Catapults groaned as their frames were raised, stones as large as oxen loaded into their cradles. Trumpets blared at dawn and dusk, not in attack, but in ritual, a reminder to the Coalition that their enemy could summon destruction whenever they chose. The Coalition answered in kind. Their smiths worked without pause, sparks dancing into the night as broken spears were reforged, blades sharpened, and shields bound with fresh leather. Their leaders walked the campfires, speaking not of wealth or conquest, but of home. Of the villages that would burn if Ironvale fell, of the children who would be chained if the Dominion triumphed. Each soldier carried not only his weapon, but the weight of every face he left behind. The valley grew restless. Each morning, the carrion birds multiplied, drawn by the scent of tension as much as death. At night, wolves howled from the hills, their voices carried down into the camps, answered by the drums of the Dominion. Mist clung tighter to the rivers until they looked less like water and more like winding veins of smoke across the plain. On the fourth day, the first true skirmish erupted. Dominion raiders stormed one of the southern crossings at dawn, their shields locked, their spears bristling in a wedge of iron. They drove across the shallows, their boots churning water into froth. The Coalition met them with desperate fury, their lines splintering under the weight of steel, yet refusing to break. The clash was brutal and brief, the river itself boiling with the thrashing of bodies. When the Dominion finally withdrew, leaving their dead behind, the water was no longer clear. It carried a faint crimson hue, drifting downstream like an omen. From that moment on, the valley knew the peace was over. The Dominion grew bolder, testing each ford, each bridge of stone and timber. The Coalition dug trenches along the banks, raising makeshift barricades of sharpened stakes and fallen logs. Every crossing became a contest. Every patch of river claimed in blood, lost, then claimed again. By the sixth day, the rivers of Ironvale were no longer silver. They ran dark with silt, churned endlessly by boots, hooves, and the bodies of the fallen. Fish floated lifeless in the current, their scales dulled by the taint of iron. The birds overhead no longer circled idly. They feasted openly upon the edges of both camps, their wings red from the harvest. The storm was ready. Both sides knew it. The Dominion prepared to unleash their full might, while the Coalition braced for the weight of an empire. Ironvale itself seemed to hold its breath. The rivers whispered louder now, no longer with calm, but with the murmur of graves yet to be filled. The waiting was over. The battle was about to begin. The seventh dawn came cloaked in fire. A crimson haze bled across the horizon, painting the mist of Ironvale in the color of slaughter. The Dominion's war drums thundered with renewed fury, their sound rolling down the cliffs like avalanches of stone. Trumpets shrieked in answer, and the valley quaked beneath the march of an empire unleashed. The Coalition stood ready at the river crossings. Their banners whipped in the morning wind, their armor dulled by days of toil, but gleaming still with defiance. The air trembled as both sides locked eyes across the waters, knowing that by nightfall, Ironvale would be drowned, not in silence, but in screams. The Dominion struck first. Catapults released their load, stones roaring overhead like meteors. They shattered barricades, splintered shields, crushed men where they stood. The sound was thunder and bone breaking as one. Then the Legion of Spears advanced, shields locked, their formation an iron wall that surged toward the river. The coalition met them in fury. Horns bellowed, voices rose, and the defenders surged to the banks with pikes lowered and shields raised. The river boiled with bodies as the first clash erupted, iron smashing against iron, blood spilling into the current. The water churned red beneath stamping boots until the ground itself seemed to bleed. Across the valley, every crossing became a storm. Dominion forces hurled themselves into the shallows, their weight driving the coalition back step by step. Arrows darkened the sky, their descent a black rain that pierced flesh and shield alike. Siege towers groaned forward, bridges of timber slamming into the banks, carrying waves of armored men into the melee. The coalition fought with desperation, lines shattered and reformed, warriors dragging the wounded back with one hand while swinging their swords with the other. Captains shouted over the roar, urging their men to hold, to anchor themselves in the rivers, to give the vale itself no choice but to drink the blood of their defiance. By midday, the rivers were unrecognizable. Once silver, once clear, they ran thick with crimson. Corpses floated downstream, colliding with jagged rocks, spinning slowly before sinking into the depths. The water carried helmets, broken shields, and the faces of the fallen, an endless procession of sacrifice. The Dominion pressed harder. Fresh ranks surged into the fray, their banners glinting in the firelight of burning siege engines. The coalition, though weary, fought with the madness of those who knew there was no retreat. Every stone, every patch of bank, every bridge was contested with screams and steel. Then the mountain itself seemed to join the slaughter. Storm clouds split above, lightning flashing across the sky, striking the cliffs with fire. Thunder rolled, drowning even the cries of the dying. Ash rained down, mingling with smoke from burning camps, until the valley became a furnace where even the air was war. The climax of Ironvale had come. The rivers, once calm, were now crimson torrents, carrying the lifeblood of thousands. Men no longer fought for ground, but for survival, clawing through mud and blood as steel flashed in the storm. By dusk, the waters had grown so thick with death that their flow slowed. Choked with the sheer weight of bodies, the vale had become not a battlefield, but a graveyard. And still, the clash raged on. Ironvale itself had drunk deep of war, and its rivers would never run clear again. When night fell upon Ironvale, the valley no longer echoed with steel, but with silence. The kind of silence that follows only after the world has been broken. The rivers, swollen with the blood of thousands, moved sluggishly through their channels. Where once they had sparkled silver, they now dragged crimson shadows into the marsh. Bodies drifted against the reeds, some still clutching broken weapons, others staring lifeless into the void above. The current carried them onward, nameless and numberless, until they sank into mud that had swallowed centuries of bones before them. The Dominion stood upon the field, but theirs was no triumphal victory. Their banners were torn, their lines thinned, their generals hollow-eyed as they surveyed the ruin. They had claimed the Vale, but at a cost so steep, it weakened the very empire they fought to expand. Songs of their triumph never rang as loudly as the whispers of their loss. Ironvale had bled them, and its wound festered long after the battle was done. The coalition, though broken, was not erased. Survivors limped into the hills, carrying scars upon their bodies and their souls. Though their banners were shattered, their defiance became legend. They had held against an empire at the edge of the world, and though they were forced to retreat, they carved a story into history greater than any crown or throne they had sought to defend. Mothers told their children of the Vale, not as a place of defeat, but as proof that resistance, though costly, could scar even the greatest of powers. Ironvale itself became cursed ground. Farmers would not till its soil. Shepherds drove their flocks far from its waters. Travelers whispered that the rivers never cleared, that even years after the battle, when the sun struck them at dawn, they gleamed faintly red, as though the Vale refused to forget. Some swore they heard the clash of steel in the mist at night, or saw the shadows of soldiers marching along the banks, forever bound to the battlefield where their blood had been spilled. Yet from that curse came a lesson. The Dominion, though it marked Ironvale as conquered, began its slow decline from that day forward, for it had spent too much of its lifeblood in a single valley. The coalition, though scattered, forged unity in memory. The tale of Ironvale became their bond, their proof that empires were not invincible. Thus, the Battle of Ironvale did not belong to the conquerors nor the conquered. It belonged to history itself, as a warning carved into the earth that rivers can drink blood until they choke, that no victory comes without ruin, and that sometimes, even in defeat, legends are born stronger than stone. Ironvale was remembered not only as the place where two armies clashed, but where rivers themselves became tombs. Its name endured not through triumph or dominion, but through the story told across centuries of sacrifice, of devastation, of the high price of war. And so the rivers of Ironvale run still, carrying with them the whispers of that day, when steel broke upon steel and blood flowed so freely that even nature bowed beneath it. The story of Ironvale was complete, a tale of war that left no victor, only survivors, and a legacy written not in ink, but in the crimson waters of a cursed vale. Legion, remember Ironvale, for its lesson is eternal. No wall, no throne, no crown endures forever. Only the weight of sacrifice, only the stories carried forward. Subscribe and join the Legion, for the night of battle has begun.